Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier are going to do it for the third and final time this weekend at UFC 264. And when it comes to thinking about what to talk about when it comes to this fight, it's hard to know where to start. There are so many different narratives that can be delved into, but I'm having a hard time differentiating between what's the most relevant out of the bunch. Is the fact that this is going to be the first time that we're going to see McGregor come back after a knockout loss for the very first time in his career? The fact that he's been making a point to be the Conor of old with the pre-fight psychological warfare? Or is it the storyline that, in an effort to refocus at the task on hand, McGregor is going to come into this fight without his family in tow? Or maybe it's about the fact that should McGregor lose this fight, that it would make him 1-3 in the lightweight division, and thus likely ushering a new trajectory for his career. Or maybe it's the storyline that if he managed to avenge the loss in spectacular fashion, that the Conor McGregor show is just going to continue on a rocket ship to Mars and set up a whole lot more greatness to come. Storyline of these fights are essential to the sport. It's why we have such an invested interest in these fights and plays an integral role in what makes the sport so damn compelling to begin with. But the truth is, in this day and age of the social media hoopla in every single element of our lives, especially in the sport of MMA, the never-ending daily news cycle that comes along with being a fan of the sport, oftentimes I tend to feel like these storylines and these fighters in general are totally overexposed. Yes, the storyline is important and it has meaning, but at the end of the day, for both Poirier and McGregor, this is just another fight. Sometimes it's better to strip away all the bells and whistles and just try to view and enjoy this thing for what it is, which at its core is nothing more than a fight between two elite UFC lightweights. So heading into this one, I just like focusing on the core of what brought us all here in the first place. Not the interviews or the press conferences or the post-fight fallout, but the actual competition itself. The persona and the circus that surrounds McGregor completely overshadows the fact that he's one of the greatest mixed martial artists on the planet. And at this point in his career, it's hard to know if he's ever going to get the proper credit in this department that he deserves, because the persona just completely outshines him as a mixed martial artist. And Poirier is right there with him talent-wise. Talk about a veteran of the game. Poirier has been fighting top talent in the UFC since 2011, and it wasn't until deep in his career that he's been hitting his stride, winning championships, and getting these major paydays that he deserves so much. It's a feel-good story to see such a thing happen to a guy like Poirier. And again, I love knowing a fighter's story and believe it to be very important, but it sometimes hits a point to where all the Twitter beefs and the forced, disingenuous trash talk in interviews and on social media for the sole purpose of fight promotion just comes across as total and utter nonsense. There's not a single tweet that any fighter can tweet that's going to generate any interest from me at this point. The overexposure and the predictability of the social media activity doesn't produce a single useful result in my eyes. The promotional BS can take a hike for this particular fight. Let's just see what happens when these two get locked in the cage together for the third time. Because if the two first fights were any indication, we are in for straight chaos and the very best entertainment the sport of mixed martial arts has to offer come Saturday night. The first fight was over in just a couple minutes, with McGregor reigning supreme and continuing his ascension to becoming the biggest, most famous athlete on the planet. And the second fight only made it a couple minutes into the second round before it was Poirier who shocked the world and had an outstanding career breakthrough by knocking out McGregor in devastating fashion. Another storyline heading into this fight is the speculation that McGregor simply doesn't have the same desire that he once did for the fight game. You know, the whole waking up in silk sheets thing. And who could blame the guy? I definitely think there's validity to that, but it's insane to think that he can't show up to 264 and end the fight just as fast as he did the first time. Just because he's impossibly rich and impossibly famous doesn't mean that his ability to refocus and put on a stunning performance is completely compromised. When McGregor is on point, he's the most composed fighter in the UFC and has an amazing ability to goad opponents right into that left hand. Poirier is an absolute technician on the feet, and he has really smart defensive tendencies that keep him out of trouble and gives him the ability to do damage. For me, where their respective careers go from here on a win or on a loss really is of minor importance when it comes to this fight. For this one, I'm not concerning myself with a single media appearance or tweet. Just face them off at the weigh-ins and lock them in the cage on Saturday night. The result will no doubt be incredibly dramatic and fun for the fans, but for McGregor and Poirier, it's going to be just another fight on the record.